I decided to open my private estate to the public, but with a catch. Guests needed to pass a net worth verification and possess a certain level of social standing. I hadn't discussed it with my wife, Sophie Beaumont, wanting to surprise her for our anniversary. But when I visited the estate that day, I found Sophie and her friends by the lakeside gazebo. My wife, who has an obsession with cleanliness, was washing another man's feet. When she saw me, her brow furrowed in disgust. "Liam, how many times have I told you? Stop trying to force your way into my circle. Is this really a place you think you belong?" Her best friend gently nudged her. "Sophie, that's too harsh." But her other friends just snickered. "What's harsh about it? We all grew up in the Greenwich community. We know our standing. What is he? Sophie marrying him was the luckiest day of his life. What's the big deal if she puts him in his place?" Sophie, looking even more humiliated, pointed at me. "Are you going to get lost or not?" The man whose feet she was washing suddenly stood up. He walked over to me, his face a mask of arrogance. "So, you're the parasite who slithered in while I was overseas?" I chuckled. "I slithered in, sure, but we have yet to determine who the parasite is." Preston Vance stood before me, puffed up with an arrogance that suggested he saw me as nothing more than an ant. I knew who he was, of course. He was Sophie's childhood friend. The two of them had orbited each other for years in that space, just short of a relationship. Basically, a long-running flirtation. After Preston's attempt to make it official failed, he'd taken off for Europe. Back then, Sophie and I were at Stanford. The campus gossip was that her old-money boyfriend had dumped her. She never denied it, but she never confirmed it either. And she was the one who pursued me. I was drawn to her looks, her defiant spirit. Her passion and persistence won me over, so I said yes. Before her, plenty of women had shown interest, but I was broke. I couldn't afford a date, and I was too busy trying to launch my first company, so I turned them all down. After I accepted Sophie, a different kind of rumor started. They said I was picking up Preston Vance's sloppy seconds. They whispered that Sophie only went after me to prove a point by landing the guy everyone said was impossible to get. I'm not one for games, so I asked her about it directly. She was half asleep at the time, curling up against me like a cat. She mumbled, annoyed. Since when are sloppy seconds a virgin? That one sentence silenced all the noise. Because when she came to me, Sophie had been untouched. We dated for 4 years. After graduation, her family was dead set against us. They went so far as to have me cornered, throwing stacks of cash from a $5 million briefcase at my chest, telling me to take the money and disappear. I didn't take a dime. Sophie came and got me out of there. She threatened her family, said she'd rather die than leave me, and then dragged me to the courthouse to get married. I could see how fiercely she loved me. It was blazing in her eyes. From that moment on, I swore I'd spend my life treating her right, that I'd give her anything. My startup took off. 3-hit mobile games with aggressive microtransactions made me ridiculously wealthy. But every time I tried to share my success with her, she'd say the same thing. "Our worlds are different, Liam. I'm not going to share my circle with you. And you don't need to share your success with me. It's enough that we love each other." She even refused when I suggested we finally have a proper wedding. She was blunt about it. "Liam, no matter how much money you make, in the eyes of my family and my friends, you'll never be the right match. There's no point in having a ceremony. I don't want you to be embarrassed." Over time, I stopped trying to share things with her, and she never asked about my work. Back then, I honestly believed she was just trying to protect me from being humiliated. Looking at her now, I see it was more likely she was the one who was humiliated by me. I looked at the hands that had just washed another man's feet, and a bitter, self-mocking feeling rose in my chest. She claimed to be a germaphobe, so I never let her do anything that might get her hands dirty. And now this? For a man she'd always had a complicated history with? I took a deep breath, then smiled faintly at Preston. "I slithered in, sure, but we have yet to determine who the parasite is." Preston's eyebrow shot up. "Are you calling me a parasite?" Before I could answer, Sophie marched over. She shoved me with her still damp hands, staining my suit jacket and forcing me back a few steps. "Liam, you are not welcome here. Go home." Her voice was ice, like she was shooing away a stray dog. I gave her a long, hard look. "Fine. You all have fun." I desperately wanted to tell her that this private estate, now open to the public, was mine. That if I didn't have the right to be here, No one did. But I held my tongue. There was no point anymore. I had already decided to divorce her. This was me giving her one last shred of dignity. But as I turned to leave, Preston bolted from the gazebo to block my path on the wooden boardwalk. Hey, he's already here. Might as well let the Hicks see how the other half lives. Preston looked back at Sophie. You wouldn't have a problem with that, would you, Soph? I looked at Sophie, thinking, surely she wouldn't let them keep me here just to be insulted. Then you can stay, she said, surprising me yet again. Fine. If that's how it was going to be, I'd stay. They were the ones who hit the start game button. Now, they would have to see it through to the end. You know what this is? Preston began, launching into a condescending lecture. It's a waterside gazebo. Back in the day, there were strict rules about who could build one. It was a status symbol. And it's the same now. Take this place, the Beaumont Reserve. To even get in, you need a verified net worth of over 100 million, plus a certain amount of social capital. He smirked at me, his eyes full of derision. Liam, I'm dying to know. How did you get in? I know you made some dirty money, but a businessman like you, reeking of new cash, has zero social standing. You shouldn't have been able to get past the gate. He stepped closer. Don't tell me you used Sophie's name to get in? Relying on a woman to get into places like this. That's pretty pathetic. I couldn't be bothered to respond to him. I simply walked over to an empty chair and sat down, my voice flat. I'm the owner. Why else do you think it's called the Beaumont Reserve? My words hung in the air, creating a momentary silence. Then, someone let out a bark of laughter. A second later, the entire group erupted. Sophie glared at me, furious. Are you satisfied now? I told you not to come near my circle, but you wouldn't listen. Now, they're humiliating you. Does that make you happy? Sophie, I have to ask, I said with a thin smile. Are you upset because they're humiliating me? Or because I'm humiliating you? She froze for a second. Then her face flushed with anger. You're the one in the wrong, and now you're trying to flip this on me. Okay, you're right, I said, not wanting to argue. It was pointless. Preston, however, was having the time of his life. He walked over, clapping me on the shoulder while laughing. Liam, oh Liam, you're the biggest bullshitter I've ever met. Claiming you own the Beaumont Reserve? Seriously, I'm almost impressed. Most people wouldn't have the balls to tell a lie that big. I held up my hands in mock surrender. I'm telling you the truth, and you don't believe me. What more can I say? Enough, Sophie shrieked, as if she'd just suffered the ultimate social disgrace. She pointed a finger at me. Liam, I hate this attitude. Apologize to Preston. Right now. An apology is out of the question, I said with a small laugh. How about this? Since you seem to value Preston so much, I'll bow out. We can find some time to get a divorce. I wish you two a long and happy life together. At that, I saw the color drain from Sophie's face. Preston, on the other hand, started clapping. Liam, I never thought you'd say it. I guess even a dog from the gutter knows when it's time to back down. Sophie was always meant to be mine. When a pair of shoes doesn't fit anymore, anyone would throw them out. It's hardly worthy of applause, I replied coolly. Shoes? Sophie's face went even paler, her eyes turning red. She looked at me in disbelief. Liam, say what you just said again. You want a divorce? You're calling me used goods, aren't you? I said flatly. You claim to have a thing about germs, yet you're washing Preston's feet. Let me ask you, in all the years we've been married, have you ever once washed mine? It's not what you think. We were just playing a game, and I lost a dare, that's all, Sophie explained hurriedly, her eyes darting around in a panic as she hid her hands behind her back. Whatever. I don't care anymore, I said with a smile. I know none of you here respect me. You think I'm just some nobody who got lucky, not high class like you. I know that since Sophie and I got together, you've all been waiting for us to split up. Some of you have even said in public that she should have been with Preston. Well, now you get your wish. The people who had been whispering behind my back for years didn't look ashamed of being called out. They looked proud. A guy named Kevin Miller even stepped forward. If you knew all along, why didn't you divorce her sooner? You were just trying to claw your way into our world, weren't you? But take a look at yourself. Do you really belong? He'd always been Preston's lackey. Back in college, he would deliberately praise Preston in front of me, saying how Sophie shouldn't have betrayed him. If it weren't for Sophie, I would have ruined him years ago. I gave him a contemptuous smile. Kevin Miller, CEO of Etherlight Games. You license a few first-person shooter mobile titles. Made a little bit of money, right? Kevin froze, frowning. What's that supposed to mean? What does it mean? If you're all going to be this shameless, then don't blame me for making you uncomfortable. I didn't say another word. I just pulled out my phone, dialed a number, and put on speaker. Jenna, Etherlight Games licenses one of our subsidiaries' titles. If I remember correctly, the contract has a special clause. If their operational conduct violates our creative principles, we can terminate the agreement at any time and they're liable for breach of contract damages. Correct? That's correct, Mr. Carter, my assistant, Jenna replied. Then terminate the agreement with Etherlight Games immediately and begin proceedings to collect the damages. I hung up. My words once again plunged the group into silence. If I told them I owned the Beaumont Reserve, they wouldn't believe it. They were convinced that the person behind an estate like this had to have a powerful background, not some self-made tech guy who came from nothing. But the phone call, they believed that. They all knew I had made my fortune in gaming. Kevin stood stunned for a moment, his voice trembling. You're saying the company we partnered with is your subsidiary, but why couldn't I find any record of that? My company's ownership structure is intentionally complex. You think it would be that easy for you to figure out? I sneered. Preston spoke up, his voice cold. Liam, have you thought about the consequences of what you're doing? You've just made an enemy of our entire circle. Sophie, regaining her composure, adopted a hard tone. Liam, stop this. I won't allow you to go after my friends. Sophie, shut your mouth, I said, my voice dangerously low. If I weren't absolutely certain that you once loved me, your company would be disappearing right along with his. What, my company? Sophie was floored. I glanced at her. That cosmetics company of yours? It doesn't even have a decent product. Who did you think was funding you? Did you really think angel investors are actual angels? It's venture capital, Sophie. Who else but me would have taken that risk? The only reason I never told you was because I know how proud you are. I didn't want to crush you. Sophie looked completely lost. Preston, however, scoffed. Liam, you think ruining our businesses means you've won. Even without our companies, we still have our social standing, our connections built over 2 or 3 generations. What do you have besides your money? Now that you've come after us, I can make sure your business vanishes overnight. Sophie tried again. Liam, please stop this. Listen to me. Leave Kevin alone. I just smiled. You all started this game. I just accepted the invitation. Don't think you can end it so easily. Just then, Preston's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his eyes lit up. He shot me a triumphant look before answering the call and putting it on speaker. Professor Sterling, are you here? We've been waiting for you. We were hoping you could introduce us to the mysterious owner of the Beaumont Reserve. Almost there. Talk to you in a minute, a middle-aged voice replied. Then, apparently forgetting to hang up, the voice continued, softer. Willow, hurry up. Stop dragging your feet. I don't care what you have to do today. You are going to win over the owner of this estate. I really like that young man. Preston smugly put his phone away, his expression more arrogant than ever. Did you hear that? Professor Arthur Sterling of the Sterling family is on his way. He's a close friend of the owner here. And it sounds like he's about to become the owner's father-in-law. What do you have to fight me with now? Impossible, I said, waving a dismissive hand, feeling completely at ease. Arthur and I get along great, but I wasn't interested in his daughter. She's too wild. Besides, I'm already married. My comment sent them into another round of roaring laughter. I didn't care. Their worldview was so narrow, so limited. Sophie, however, quietly came up beside me and leaned in to whisper in my ear. Please, Liam, stop it. They really can destroy you. They can make you lose everything. I turned my head to look at her, her face just inches from mine. She was as beautiful as the day I first met her, and her eyes were filled with genuine worry. But could I still trust her? The truth was I wasn't angry about her washing Preston's feet. I was angry about her attitude toward me. She, just like her friends, saw me through the prejudiced lens of my working-class background. They all carried this insufferable sense of entitlement, a belief that they were a higher class of human, and I despised it. Maybe even without what happened today, Sophie and I would have ended up divorced. It was only a matter of time. In a way, I was grateful for this incident. It was the catalyst that could finally end this broken relationship. Just then, 2 figures appeared at the end of the boardwalk. In the lead was Arthur Sterling, dressed in a casual gray tracksuit. The Sterlings were an esteemed academic family in Austin. 3 generations, including his daughter, Willow, were all professors at the university's law school. They never went into politics or business, but their influence was immense, with former students in powerful positions everywhere. I'd met Arthur during my morning runs. I saw him playing chess in the park, noticed his skill, and challenged him to a game. We became chess buddies and eventually close friends. He never knew I was married and was always trying to set me up with his daughter. And his daughter, Willow, on the surface, she was the picture of a pure, innocent young professor. In reality, she was a wild woman who wore black stockings, drove a sports car like a maniac, and could drink anyone under the table. "Professor Sterling, you finally made it." Preston immediately slipped on his shoes and hurried to greet him. Everyone else, including Sophie, followed suit. Kevin shot me a hateful glare. "You think you can use your business to control me? Let me tell you, the Sterling family's network is beyond your imagination, and the owner of this place is even more powerful. Once I make that connection, you're finished. I already told you, the reserve is mine. Why won't any of you believe me?" I said with a sigh. By now, Preston had led the Sterlings over. Arthur was severely nearsighted and didn't recognize me at first. But Willow's eyes were sharp. She spotted me immediately and looked surprised. She was dressed in her usual white sundress, her long hair loose, looking pure and beautiful, but her eyes held a flirtatious spark. Preston, seeing me still seated, barked, "Liam, you bastard! Don't you see Professor Sterling is here? How dare you remain seated? Get up and show some respect." Sophie quickly added, "Liam, stand up. The professor and I are old friends. We don't stand on ceremony," I said with a smile. I casually reached under the nearby coffee table, a place I knew well, and pulled out a chess set. With the same familiar motion, I cleared the tea set, moving with an ease that bespoke ownership. Preston shot me a furious look, then turned to Arthur. "My apologies, Professor Sterling. This is Liam Carter. He's from the gutter, has no manners. Please don't be often. Whose ancestors weren't from the gutter?" Arthur cut him off coldly. He then looked toward me, and his entire expression changed. He rubbed his hands together like an excited child. "Liam, my boy, if I don't beat you today, I'll give you my daughter." Willow rolled my eyes. I rolled my eyes. Sophie, Preston, Kevin, and the rest of them were completely dumbfounded. Preston watched as Arthur sat down across from me, the two of us already setting up the chessboard. He hurried over. "Professor, you know him?" Without looking up from the board, Arthur said, "You use your grandfather's name to beg me for an introduction to the owner of this estate. The owner is sitting right in front of you, and not only do you not recognize him, you insult him as being from the gutter. The Vance family is really going downhill." "What?" Preston was utterly stunned. No one else could manage a word. Sophie just stared at me, her face a canvas of shock. Like the others, she simply couldn't believe that I could be the owner of the Beaumont Reserve. Preston stood there, dazed for a long time before stammering, "How is that possible?" I heard the owner here is tight with several of the signs from the D. C. Elite. With Liam's background, he could sharpen his head to a point and still never get close to those people. Arthur was getting impatient. "I don't know about all that, but I can confirm that Liam is the owner of this place. Since it seems you all know each other, consider my introduction complete. And don't bother asking my family for any more favors in the future." Preston looked like he'd just lost a billion-dollar deal. I glanced at him and placed a chess piece on the board. "The foundation of your confidence, your plan to leave me with nothing, was the owner of the Beaumont Reserve. And I am the owner of the Beaumont Reserve, which means the foundation of your confidence was me. Isn't that hilarious?" Preston's lips trembled. He couldn't process the fact that the person he had been desperately trying to suck up to was the very man he despised the most. Just then, several staff members approached. The man in the lead was young, but carried himself with an unmistakable air of wealth and authority. Preston saw him, paused, then rushed over, bowing slightly. "Excuse me, are you from the Davenport family in D. C?" "I am." The young man nodded, moving to walk around him. But Preston kept pace, smiling obsequiously. "I'm Preston Vance, from the Austin Van Cess. Our families come from the same lineage. The Austin Van Cess once betrayed our family in D. C." The young man said coldly. "You even tried to steal the family registry. The D. C. Davenport's removed your branch from the family records generations ago. Stop trying to claim a relationship that doesn't exist. Though he was young, he projected an undeniable aura of command. However, when he reached me, he first bowed respectfully, then broke into a wide grin. Liam, what do you think? Does the suit look okay? Yeah, you clean up nice, I nodded with a smile. By the way, Chris, your sister was very clear. You're not going anywhere this summer, and that especially means no chasing girls. So you better behave. Chris Davenport grinned. Don't worry, man. Even though you're not officially my brother-in-law, you are in my book. I'll listen to you. He knew about Sophie, so he was saying it on purpose. He'd probably been watching the whole scene unfold on a security feed. Hearing this, Sophie's face grew even paler. She looked like she wanted to approach me, but couldn't bring herself to move. Preston, however, quickly asked, "Excuse me, is your sister by any chance Catherine Davenport?" "She is. What's it to you?" Chris asked, his expression turning cold. When Preston looked back at me, his eyes were filled with pure terror. Chris then asked, "Liam, you said you wanted to celebrate your anniversary here. Should we continue with the preparations?" "No need," I said with a wave of my hand. "Ms. Beaumont and I will be getting a divorce." Liam, Sophie started, but couldn't finish, covering her mouth as she began to sob. Willow Sterling, who had been enjoying the drama, suddenly chimed in. "So, Liam, already married?" "He just said they're getting divorced." Arthur said nonchalantly, "Don't worry, Liam, I'm still very keen on being your father-in-law. My daughter doesn't mind if you're a little second-hand." Willow rolled her eyes again. I just shook my head and smiled, then looked over at Sophie and her friends. "You all should go. The Beaumont Reserve is no longer open to you. Actually, it's not called the Beaumont Reserve anymore. From now on, it's the Carter Estate." "Liam, listen to me. I can explain." Sophie tried to say more, but when her eyes met my icy gaze, she broke down into uncontrollable tears. I gestured for the staff to escort them out. Suddenly, Kevin Miller dropped to his knees in front of me, bowing his head to the ground repeatedly. "Mr. Carter, I swear I meant you no harm. It was all Preston. He made me do it. Please, give me another chance." I ignored him, instead looking at the other friends. The Prescott family in real estate, the Hayes family with their streaming media company, the Donovan family in animation. All of you should prepare for bankruptcy. Their faces crumpled in despair. I took one last, long look at Sophie. "You always said I could never fit into your world. The truth is, I always wanted to tell you that the core businesses of everyone in your precious circle depend on me to survive. But I guess it doesn't matter anymore, because I don't care about you anymore." Then I waved my hand, and the staff removed them from my property. That evening, I went back to the penthouse not far from my office, the home Sophie and I shared. When I walked in, I saw her busy in the kitchen. The air was filled with the aroma of my favorite dishes. But I felt no joy, because Preston was there too. When Preston saw me, he scurried over, crouching down to get my slippers. "Liam, I know I was wrong. I came here to apologize. Please, just give me a chance." I didn't change my shoes. I walked right past him without a second glance. Sophie came out of the kitchen, nervously wiping her hands on her apron. She forced a smile, but my cold expression made it vanish. "Liam, please, just give me a chance to explain," she said. I sat on the sofa, lit a cigarette, and took a slow drag. "There's no need. It's really not necessary anymore." I sighed. Sophie rushed to my side, grabbing my arm. "Liam, you know I don't love Preston. I never have. He was the one spreading those rumors back then, and I only stayed quiet because our families are so close. He came back and threatened me with your business. That's why I forced myself to do that." Preston came over and dropped to his knees in front of me. "Liam, she's telling the truth. Everyone in our circle knows. I chased her our whole lives, and she always rejected me. This time, I did. I used you to threaten her. You think her washing your feet is the key issue here?" I scoffed, pushing Sophie away. "Sophie, we've been married for years, and you've always said I could never fit into your world. You never let me come to your gatherings. You refused to even have a wedding. You said it was because you didn't want me to be humiliated, but wasn't the truth that you were humiliated by my background?" "No, Liam, that's not it. It's not," she cried. "You have no idea how toxic that world is. They're so arrogant, always thinking they're better than everyone else. But you are my everything. I didn't want you to get hurt, so I just kept you away from them. I honestly didn't know. I didn't know you were already powerful enough to control all of their businesses. If I had known, I would never have. I cut her off with a wave of my hand. I let out a bitter laugh. You didn't know I could control their businesses because you never believed I could. You never bothered to understand how successful I'd become, never looked into my network. If you had, you would have known long ago that the people in your circle don't have the right to humiliate me. I laughed again, a sound devoid of humor. Sophie, do you have any idea what it feels like to be looked down on by the woman you love? It was my fault. All of it was my fault. I'll change right now, she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Please, Liam, just give me a chance. You know that without you, I'll die. I shook my head. Stop talking. Let's just get the divorce over with as quickly as possible. Sophie stood up and walked silently to the kitchen. She returned with a butcher knife. She placed her left hand flat on the coffee table, raised the knife with her right, and screamed, I'll wash his feet, so my hand is dirty. I'll get rid of it, okay? As long as you forgive me, I'll do whatever you want. With that, she brought the knife down. I lunged forward, shoving her and grabbing the knife. I pointed at her, my voice shaking with anger. You're just like them. They saw my background and assumed I could never own the Carter estate. And you believe the same thing. And yet, here we are. Do you know what that means? It means our core values are fundamentally incompatible. Whatever you say, I'll accept it. I'll change. But I will not get a divorce, she shouted hysterically. If you force me to divorce you, I'll kill myself. Just then, my security detail entered the apartment. I pointed at Preston. Get him out of here. As for Sophie, I was genuinely afraid she might try to kill herself. So I had no choice but to let her stay for the time being. I let Sophie stay, but I gave her the silent treatment. When I woke up the next morning, I found her asleep on the sofa. Not wanting any more drama, I left quietly. Back at the office, Jenna handed me a tablet. Mr. Carter, someone's running a smear campaign against you. I took one look at it and almost laughed out loud. I was trending on Twitter with a couple of very creative hashtags. Hashtag Austin Techmagulliam Carter cheats and wifey with Chia-V-Wait Catherine Davenport. Hashtag Liam Carter's affair drives wife to suicide attempt. Hashtag Davenport family issues statement confirming business ties to Liam Carter. Hashtag Catherine Davenport confirms she knows Liam Carter is married but wouldn't mind being second wife if he gets divorced. My head throbbed. I didn't have to guess to know this was Preston's counterattack. Just then, there was a knock on my office door. Preston waltzed in, smiling. Liam, the Davenports and D.C. may be backing you, but if Sophie comes forward and confirms you cheated, it's still going to hurt you. Sophie and I grew up together, and you've just broken her heart. Do you really think she won't help me? Get to the point, I said, managing a smile. Preston sat on the sofa. I know you're close with a few of the big players in D.C. I went on a major pharmaceutical deal in the city. You help me get it, and I'll disappear from your life for good. No problem, I nodded. You can go. Someone will be in touch with you this afternoon. Preston gave me a long, searching look. I'll give you one day. Then he left. I had Jenna step out, and I made a few calls. That afternoon, Preston received a call. It was from a senior member of his own family, telling him to fly overseas immediately to meet with a very important client. Preston, suspecting nothing, got on a plane. 2 weeks later, news came from abroad that Preston was dead. He was killed by a drunk driver in a hit and run. When I received the news, my expression didn't change, but inside, a storm was raging. The people in D.C. played for keeps. For 2 weeks, that important client had genuinely been negotiating a deal with Preston. They were at the point of finalizing contract details. And then Preston died. They were patient predators. It reminded me of what Catherine Davenport had told me when she first introduced me to her circle. Dealing with these people is like making a deal with the devil. The only reason I'm even letting you meet them is because I've got a thing for you and can cover your ass. Otherwise, I wouldn't dare. I had met Catherine through business. She wanted to expand into the tech sector, but didn't have time to build from scratch. So she was looking to acquire a mature internet company. One of my smaller companies fit the bill perfectly. A solid team and a clean record. She sought me out, and we negotiated the acquisition. Realizing I was facing someone I couldn't afford to cross, and seeing she was being reasonable, I agreed quickly. Later, we worked on a few projects together. Her move into the tech world was at the behest of people high up in the government. The work was related to combating foreign-led online disinformation campaigns. For a time, we worked day and night, and the success of our digital strategy directly contributed to a major strategic victory for the administration. You could say Catherine and I had a friendship forged in the foxhole. Spending all that time together, she developed feelings for me, but I turned her down. After that, she focused on helping me expand my network. I was lost in memories of Catherine when my phone rang. It was Sophie. For the past 2 weeks, she had stayed at the apartment. I ignored her, but she never left. I answered the phone, but said nothing. Sophie's voice was weak. Liam, I was wrong, but I love you. Her tone sent a jolt of alarm through me. Then wait for me. We'll have dinner at home, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, terrified she was about to do something stupid. No matter what, she had loved me. Even if her own elitism made her look down on me. Even if she never truly believed in me. In all our years together, she had never betrayed me. She had always loved me. So even if we were divorcing, I wanted her to be okay. You figured it out, didn't you? Trying to keep me on the line? Her voice was heartbreaking. It's too late, Liam. I'm already dying. I raced home, but she wasn't there. I drove to her parents' house. My in-laws, who had once thrown money at me, were now sickeningly pleasant. I had no time for them. I asked if Sophie was there. They said no. From that day on, Sophie Beaumont vanished from my world. I fell into a dark place for a while, wondering if I had been too cruel. She knew she was wrong. She said she would change. Why hadn't I given her a chance? But what good was regret now? I figured this feeling I had, this gnawing regret, was probably the same thing she had felt. A few years passed. My business empire grew, and I moved my headquarters to New York. Catherine and I became closer. The government tasked us with another high-level, confidential project, and once again, we were working side by side day and night. One night, after too much whiskey, she made a move. I was only half resisting. We ended up together. After the project concluded, Catherine and I were married. I always had the feeling that someone was watching me, but I could never find them. My name is Sophie Beaumont, and I grew up in the privileged bubble of Greenwich, Connecticut. From a young age, I hated the atmosphere of my community. The people I grew up with looked down on anyone they considered ordinary, yet they would turn into sycophants for anyone they perceived as having higher status. I hated it, but I was also a product of it, influenced by it every single day. To act against it meant being an outcast, and I hated that feeling even more. Preston Vance liked me since we were kids, but I always turned him down. Still, our families were close, so to save him the embarrassment, I never publicly corrected the rumors he spread about us. Before college, he confessed his love for me in front of everyone. I rejected him in front of everyone. Humiliated, he left for Europe. When I got to Stanford, I was immediately drawn to one person. My friends all talked about this one upperclassman who was impossible to get. The pretty girls, the rich girls, the brilliant girls, they all failed. His name was Liam Carter. He was handsome and had a quiet intensity. He seemed humble, but he had a spine of steel. I approached him directly and asked him why he turned everyone down. He told me he was on a full scholarship, couldn't afford to date, and had no interest in being a kept man. Besides, he was launching a gaming startup and didn't have time to waste on romance. But I saw it. I saw the way his eyes would linger on me when we crossed paths, how he would be the one to initiate a greeting. He smiled more for me than he did for anyone else. He liked me. I was sure of it. We did get together, but I knew my family and friends would try to tear us apart. They would never allow me to marry him. I had to threaten to kill myself to make it happen. The truth is, I knew he was already becoming successful, but I was terrified of my family and friends humiliating him. I couldn't cut off my family, and I needed to maintain my social ties. So I thought the best solution was to keep him away from that world I myself found so dirty. Then Preston came back. He had made new connections, and he used Liam's business to threaten me, trying to get me into his bed. I would never agree, and he didn't dare force me. He knew I was crazy enough to kill him. But he did force me, in front of all our old friends, to wash his feet as a way to humiliate me. I thought if it keeps Liam safe, I can endure it. But I never expected Liam to show up right at that moment. I tried to make him leave because I knew Preston would torment him. But then I found out that he was the owner of the Beaumont Reserve, and he had named it the Beaumont Reserve because my last name was Beaumont. In that single instant, I realized my mistake. The mistake was that I had never truly trusted the man I loved. I never believed that the boy from a working-class background could single-handedly dominate our entire social class. But it was too late. Years of my own arrogance and prejudice had worn away all the love he had for me. I disappeared. I would watch him from a distance sometimes. When I saw him looking lost and dejected, my heart ached for him, but a part of me was also happy because it meant he cared. Then, I saw him with Catherine Davenport. I saw them get married. It was time for me to go, to truly leave. The last thing I want to say to him is this: I was wrong, but I love you.